Now, if you think about all those problems, it's also design. The design for tomorrow, whether it be 6 months or 2 to 5 years down the road, is still design.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into Nodes of Design. To help support our mission spread knowledge, we have a very special guest on today's episode. Let's welcome Phil Balagtas, who is an experienced design director at McKinsey Design and also the founder of the Design Futures Initiative, which is a non-profit initiative that focuses on events, workshops focused on speculative design, design fiction, futurism, and foresight. Phil is a design leader with demonstrated history on working on various digital aviation and aerospace industry and experience designing across variety of devices and platforms with non-profit, retail, advertising, and enterprise software organizations. He's been also a keynote speaker at various occasions evangelizing the speculative design. In this episode, Phil had shared wonderful insights on speculative design and what exactly is speculative design and why is it necessary for a designer to speculate. We also spoke on how speculative design can be integrated with design thinking to form stories or fiction of the future. In the end, we spoke on few frameworks and the processes that one must start to begin with speculative design. And we also discussed on few limitations with speculative design. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and on every Friday, we release new episodes with different creative leaders from around the world to help you better understand different concepts related to design. So don't forget to tune in into Notes of Design every Friday. With that being said, happy designing everyone. Hi Phil, welcome to Nodes of Design. It's a pleasure hosting you today on our show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
So Phil, how's your day going?
My day is fine. It's a busy week. I kind of forgot what day is it. What is it, Friday? It's Friday here in the United States. Yeah, I go through these moments where I forget what day it is and what time it is. I'm sitting down at my desk for so long.
Phil, if you could give a brief about yourself to our audience out there.
My name is Phil Balagtas. I'm the founder and president of the Design Futures Initiative. We're a 501c3 nonprofit here in San Francisco, California, dedicated to the advancement and education of futures design, which incorporates speculative design and strategic foresight.
Thank you so much, Phil. So basically, what was your journey into design and how did you start? What are your tips to the beginners that you want to suggest?
My journey. I'm trained as a graphic designer. I got my undergraduate degree in graphic design and visual arts, and I was supposed to be doing books and magazines. But before I graduated, I was very fascinated with the web and learned how to code and became a web designer after that. And then did that for a little bit. And in 2007, I moved to San Francisco, started studying design thinking. I went back and got my master's at the California College of the Arts and learned research and became a UX designer and strategist, I think. And I got a job in Silicon Valley, as many do here in San Francisco. And what's my tips for beginners? There's so many designers that are out there today. There's a lot more than there used to be. And I think we sort of forget how important design is, the design of systems, design, not just the design of products or tech tools and services, but design of policies and really those interconnected systems that help govern us as a society, not just the things we use. And so I would really try to look beyond what, a thing or an object and try to really continue to scan the world and think about what is good design and how can I make a much greater impact on the rest of the world.
Thank you so much, Phil. So let's begin our episode today with discussion on speculative design. So what is speculative design and benefits of speculative design? And why is it essential for any designer to speculate?
It's funny because I've been talking about this topic for so many years. I feel like it's over a decade, but every time someone asks me, I always have a hard time responding because it's an evolving definition, I feel like. Speculative design doesn't necessarily have to be in the future, though that's typically how you see it, or how people categorize it. But I always think of it as sort of a vehicle. It's a methodology for crafting visions of what a possible or alternate future or alternate realities might be like to provoke some kind of a discussion about how design can have an impact. And yeah, there's speculative design, which design is usually associated with artifacts and tangible things. That's why it's sort of a vehicle. But there's a whole strategy around that for how do you speculate about the future. And I think that's one thing that people miss a lot, is that a designed object or futuristic object isn't just a piece you talk about, but there's a lot of thinking that goes around what are the trends that create this future? What are the influencing factors for what this world might look like? What does the world look like in this future? And it's a way of kind of provoking a discussion, much needed discussion about what kind of future we want or don't want. I don't know if that's very abstract.
Thank you, Phil. So how can we speculate design be integrated into design thinking, like to create or to form the stories of fiction of the future?
Well, I guess I should sort of foray the last question to this question with an example so that people understand it, because I felt like my answer was very abstract. But when you think of, like, I don't know, the future of farming or the future of healthcare, really, and that's a really important one today. We are in a very turbulent time. We don't really know what the next 6 months is going to look like, much less the next 2 to 5 years. And with regard to COVID, now is a very, very, very good opportune time for us to be practicing speculative futures thinking, really trying to see right beyond the corner. What are the needs of patients in the future? What does that world look like? What are the remnants of the COVID era? Are we through the COVID era? Do we think we'll be through the COVID era? What does culture look like at that time? I mean, we already have these weird social contracts that we have to create today with the masks and the distancing, which is changing the way that we interact as humans. Now, if you think about all those problems, it's also design, right? The design for tomorrow, whether it be 6 months or 2 to 5 years down the road, is still design, no matter how you think of it. So we're really trying to push this in our community and even in our workplaces about strategic thinking through futures thinking, where we are looking at what are the current trends, really having our fingers on the pulse of what's going on, and creating scenarios, multiple scenarios. What happens if this happens, or if this happens, or this happens? Because I think that's where we've failed in the past, is we haven't been, one, inclusive in the conversations for who our products are designed for, two, holistically intelligent about the scenarios that might appear, the good and the bad. We're sort of only preparing for the scenario which gives us our bottom line, or the immediate return on investment, whatever that may be, and not really thinking about the negative aspects of what could happen. So I think that design thinking is going to continue to evolve. We're seeing a lot of interest in these methodologies. We're not trying to change design. We're trying to say, let's enhance design. Let's think about more people, more impact, more scenarios, more applications, and design around those, or at least put up the contingencies for it. Contingency doesn't have to be this brand new feature that costs millions of dollars that you have to bolt on just because you're not sure if it's going to happen or not. As a safety, I mean, contingencies can be in the form of policy as well, about who uses, how things are used, to what end, and to what reach, those kind of things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Any framework or process you suggest for how to design, looking at the futures and design for product or services?
The frameworks or processes. Well, so everyone always wants to know the answer to this question. How do we do it? And how do we integrate it? I guess the frameworks that I've been talking about for quite some time have been the futures cone, which is also called the cone of possibility, which starts to set a baseline for how people think about the future. At least they start to realize that the future isn't one path. There are several alternative possibilities and plausibilities in the future. And so once you start to understand that the world opens up, you have more, I guess, room to play with, or room for imagination, or at least openness to something different. That's one. Setting the foundation that there's multiple futures. Two is we also use the implications wheel, which is a wheel with concentric circles, and they are each circle is an implication. So you put in the center your event, your idea, your trend, your whatever it might be, and you draw a line from that center to some other bubble on the outside. And that's your direct implication. That's exactly what's going to happen, what we expect to happen if this becomes true. If autonomous cars become ubiquitous, we know there might be less accidents. It's a known fact. But every event that happens beyond that point is an indirect implication, or just another consequence, a second order consequence, a third order consequence. And the more you start to map out all of these different implications, it opens up the world. It gives you, it shows you the blind spots, and you start to discover more about this idea or trend or whatever it might be than you did before. So those are a couple of different ways of looking at it. And then there's this whole other discipline we talk a lot about called strategic foresight, which is a very methodical practice where you have a lot of different analytical frameworks. You're analyzing trends and pushing them to the future. You're doing historical analysis, and there's a whole big toolkit. And I think that there's a very useful way to use those along with speculative frameworks to really carve out what that world is going to be like. So STEEP is a famous one, STEEP, which stands for social, technological, environmental, economical, and political layers of whatever it is you're looking at. So if you look at what the environment of 2030 is going to be 2030 is going to look like, and you do a STEEP analysis on it, like, what does the social landscape look like? What's our economic landscape look like? What's the technology that's prevalent in this time? What's our political spectrum look like? You get to start to see the world and shape the world from a macro lens. And then you can do a STEEP analysis on your workplace if you want to. You get very micro. But once you start to build in all those gaps, you start to understand this is the world that we're living in, that we're eventually going to live in. Now we can design around it. And that's where speculative design comes in. So STEEP plus the implications plus just the craft of the design is what helps create those artifacts. You can pick an implication that's on the outer rim, the third order consequence, and design around that problem. That's where the pandemic lived. That's where these blind spots lived. And those outer rims.
Thank you, Phil. So any limitations to keep in mind in speculative design?
The greatest limitation we've found so far is adoption. And of course, buy-in. That sounds like that's everything, really. It's like, someone's got to actually believe it for it to be valid. A lot of companies that seek speculative design, they seek a vision, but yet they're not always prepared to invest in a vision that's beyond the next 2-3 years. Because if you look at something that's 5 to 10 years beyond, how do you actually put the money down on something that you can't measure for 5 or 10 years? The whole world will change so dramatically in the next 5 or 10 years. Like, how do you know you're investing in the right thing? How do you put that much money and effort behind it? But you get like a business strategist, you get like a consultant to come in and they do a bunch of PowerPoint charts and they do these very linear progressions and they say, in the next 10 years, you're going to make this much money or lose this much money. And yet to a business, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, let's change everything. But you come in from a design perspective and say, I've created this world for you in 10 years and it's going to look like this. And this is how we're going to act as a society. And this is what the environment's going to look like. And, and you start to create this really rich and vivid picture, and then you put this artifact in the middle of it and say, this is a speculative design of something that you might want to create. It becomes this, it's a little scary. It looks a little bit science fiction. And sometimes businesses don't grasp onto that world, which is mind-boggling, the way that they grasp onto the PowerPoint chart with the lines and all the line charts and all the big numbers. And so it shows you that they really care about numbers for one thing, but getting them invested in that long-term view is sometimes very difficult. I mean, who cares about the process and how it got there? It's just like investing in this vision is sometimes not easy, but it's getting traction. People have been doing vision-y future videos and the future of work and the future of automobiles and all kinds of stuff. So we've sort of been doing it for a long time. We just haven't been calling it speculative design or futuring. It's been around.
Thank you so much, Phil, for a wonderful insight. So we'll end the show by you recommending us 3 favorite books of yours and also people who inspire you the most in the space.
Well, I think there's one book that I used to always recommend, and it's not a futures book. It's called Exposing the Magic of Design. It's by John Kolko. For me, again, back to one of your first questions, looping back around on tips for designers, and like my answer being look for good design. Understanding how to do good design is very important. And that's sometimes an art and a talent and a science. And this book talks about synthesis, how you synthesize ideas. You can go out and be a really good listener and talk to people and learn a lot of things. But if you can't synthesize that into a novel, design, a novel thing that solves the problem elegantly, beautiful, it works well, all that stuff, then you're sort of you're not, you could do the job, but it's better when you do a much more beautiful job. That'll help you with synthesis and give you some different frameworks for how to think about problems and how to solve them uniquely. And then the one I always recommend is called Speculative Everything by Anthony Dunne and Fiona Raby. They were professors at the Royal College of Art Designing Interactions program, who coined the term critical design. It's a collection of a lot of their work and some of their students' work, and it's a really beautiful introduction into speculative design. That's very conceptual, so just be careful. It's not like the thing. It's not the Bible for how you do it in the corporate workplace. So just remember that. There's another one. Can I recommend two more?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So there's another one called Reframe, which again is also a book about design and synthesis and thinking, because I think this is as a foundation, before you even do futures work, it's nice to have a good foundation of like design problem solving. Reframe is a great book, and I've been recommending it for such a long time. It's by Mona Patel, and it talks about how do you reframe a problem. And God, we could use this today, is you could reframe any problem in a number of different dimensions, number of different frames. And it might be reframe the user of it. So if you're talking about a toothbrush, how do you reframe the user? It's not for humans, it's for dogs. How does it change? If it's for dogs, and how does that change the way it's created? Or you're typically toothbrush, you brush your teeth in the bathroom. What if you didn't have to brush your teeth in the bathroom and you reframe the environment and you have to brush your teeth in the streets, like in a car or on the go? How does it change what the toothbrush is? It might not be a stick with bristles on the end. It might be something that's hands-free, that's made out of organic material that you put in your mouth. It starts to change the way the object is. And you can also use that on a systems level too. Like what if one system, you reframe the usage of one system into another system? And it allows you to gives you much more creative output or perspective on something. What else? So I guess I'll remember, because this one's about this episode is about speculative design. There's a book that just came out called Discursive Design, and it's Bruce Tharp is the author, and it's a compendium of speculative and futures pieces from decades. He's collected it. It's more of a textbook, I think. If he uses it as a textbook at his course. He's a professor at the University of Detroit, Stamps College, and if you just want to see all the different kinds of speculative design work, from the conceptual stuff that Fiona Raby and Anthony Dunne were putting out, to more of the recent contemporary designs that are coming out, both from school and practice professionally, that's a really great book. People who inspire me the most in this space. When I think about that question, I don't have any like real rock stars in my mind. I think about there's a woman named Nicola Holden, who is working for an innovation arm of the World Food Bank of the United Nations. It's an arm of the United Nations. Now, the World Food Program is dedicated to bringing food to populations that need it, whether it's after a traumatic natural event, like a natural disaster, or it's just a war-torn country. And they have an innovation group out in Munich, and she leads that group and is teaching them how to improve design thinking for delivery to the ground. And when you think about how lucky she is to be in a position to work this connected to the UN and help them with the design process, improve that so it's more efficient, so lives are saved. Not just the end users' lives are saved, but making it easier for the people who are actually delivering it there also. That's a heroic human being right there. There are a lot of other people that are doing work in social impact spaces, and we're doing a project with the UN, and Martin Walish, he's the officer at the United Nations Department of Peacebuilding and Political Affairs, and he's very invested in speculative design, and he's been sort of evangelizing it within his department. Again, an innovation cell connected to the UN. He reports directly to the Secretary General, I believe, but very interested in this work. And he wanted to do something around it. And so we're helping them with a competition right now. And it's another instance of someone who's in, a very a globally impacting organization, really trying to do the right thing for the human species, and really thinking outside the box, right? Not thinking conservatively, and really trying to understand how do we actually enhance all of this? How do we make it better, faster, more effective? Those people are amazing. Those are the heroes that we should be looking for. Not the people with millions of followers who, have brands and all that stuff. Though it helps to get the word out. But people who are actually making a lot of progress on a global scale, those are the heroes.
Indeed, Phil. Thank you so much for your wonderful time. We would love to host you again in our future coming episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this.